What is one unsolved case that is haunting you because of it not being solved? Story 1. St. Louis Jane Doe, 8 to 11 years old, was found decapitated in an abandoned house in 1983. She had been violation 2. Awful, this poor little girl has been unnamed for so long, and her killers haven't been caught. It's always haunted me. I hope she gets her name back someday and her killers brought to justice. Answer. Authorities apparently found a close relative through DNA, but when they approached the person with questions, the relative refused to speak to anyone and removed all of their info from the DNA sites. The little girl apparently did have family ties to a very small town in Alabama that, according to census, only has about 100 African Americans, so it might be possible to narrow down her name that way. At any rate, I believe they do have a possible identity for this child, but aren't able to release a positive ID because the family refuses to cooperate. Story 2. Those yogurt shop takedown in Austin, Texas some time ago. 14 girls take down after closing the shop, and the case still hasn't been solved. Story 3. Elizabeth Bereza takedown, targeted hit at garage sale. Cannot figure why she was targeted. Killer drove past again after the hit a few minutes later, which was super risky. Someone wanted her very dead. Story 4. Missing Timothy Pitson. 2011. Mom checked him out of school in Illinois, took him a bunch of places, then was found dead in her hotel room of tragic end. Kid was nowhere to be found. Story 5. Asha Degree is the first that comes to mind. She was a 9-year-old girl who seemingly had a nice and normal life. No bullying or abuse at home as far as cops could find. Then one night in the middle of a rainstorm, she packs up a backpack, walks out into the night, and is never seen again. A few people claimed they saw her walking on the highway, but when they would pull up to her, she would run away from them. Her backpack was found buried in a barn somewhere, I think. But to this day, a body has never been found. What eliminates me the most is hearing that her brother actually woke up that night and heard her moving around the room, but he assumed she was just going to the bathroom or getting a drink, so he went back to sleep. That must haunt him every day that he didn't check on her. Story 6. Rebecca Reyusch. It's a German case. A girl went to her sister's husband's house and suddenly is gone, and the husband took a long, suspicious trip to the middle of nowhere early in the morning. But the whole family is defending him. Answer. I read through the Wikipedia page, and it's 100 the brother-in-law. He had been out at a party and arrived at home at 05:45. At 07:01, Rebecca's sister, his wife, leaves with their son. Sometime after that, her phone remains accessible but then goes dark. The BIL also claims to have slept all morning, but has watched violent bondage adult content around that time. He then goes on a long, suspicious drive with his car that he hasn't explained. I think the BIL assaulted or tried to assault Rebecca that morning, and he ended up strangling her to passing by mistake, either to satisfy his kink or to quiet her down. Story 7. There's a kid from around the area where I grew up who supposedly went missing for years. Then he shows up one day and says he's been at home with his mom the whole time, and police realized they'd interacted with him over the years, but he gave a fake name. It was all over Houston news for a while, then just kind of fizzled out. Answer. It fizzled out because he was an adult who, according to investigators, chose to stay there. There was talk about the mom being charged with providing false information, but I'm not sure where that landed. She claims he really did run away all those years ago, but that he returned days later, and she just kept up the shtick. My guess is she hid him the entire time for sympathy or money. Like Munchausen's syndrome by proxy, but with a missing child instead of a sick one. Story 8. Xavier de Ligon, famous French case. March 2011. He buys a rifle, silencer, and started going to shooting range April 6-10. Neighbors notice less activity from his family and contact the police. Apparently during that time he sent strange letters to some friends that implied he might have been a U.S. secret agent, which was never confirmed. April 11th. He is seen leaving his house in northern France April 14th to 15, seen alive in a hotel in southern France. Last time he was ever seen. April 21st. Police discovers his wife and 4 kids' bodies buried under the backyard patio. It is estimated that he eliminated his wife and 3 youngest kids on April 3rd to 4. His oldest one was lured by his father to come back home from college on April 5th, and most likely eliminate that day. As of today, we still have no idea on why, no idea on if he is still alive and where he might be. Edit. As a few mentioned, he probably did it because he owed a lot of money to many of his friends and family, and he was completely broke. Completely forgot about that. Answer: he was cold. He took that son out for a meal before eliminate him. He had overstretched himself financially and didn't want his family to realize that he was a loser. He also had cheated on his wife. He was seen walking into the forest when he checked out of that hotel. It's a cheap chain hotel in Roquebrune. I drive past it quite often and always wonder where he went. Story 9. Andrew Gosden. He skips school, takes a train to London, is seen on CCTV leaving the train station, and just vanished. Answer: I've heard quite a few theories on what happened. Maybe he committed tragic end there. Some of the things he did in the months leading up to his disappearance sound like warning signs of an impending tragic end, like suddenly not going to church or not being a Cub Scout. IRC, he also suddenly walked to or from school. Maybe he was groomed. He apparently repeatedly lost his phones, but it's not impossible that he lied about it to be able to stay in touch with his abuser. Maybe he wanted to secretly visit a concert and wanted to stay the night with one of his relatives in London. The reason why he didn't tell them might have been that they wouldn't have wanted him to skip school for that. Story 10. The Hinterkaifeck Takedown. 1922, Germany, a family of 6 is found takedown on a remote farm. Prior to the takedown, the family heard strange noises coming from the house's attic. Answer: I think the most credible theory is that the father, Andreas, take down his family and then went about his business for several days. He then succumbed himself either through an accident in the barn or he was taken down by the neighbor daughter's lover, Schlittenbauer. All the occupants except Celie, who was eliminated with Andreas' pocket knife, were taken down via blow to the head with the mattock, which was so skillfully hidden it wasn't discovered until the property was demolished, while Andreas bled out after neck trauma from a pickaxe found at the scene. Story 11. 10 years ago, my kid's bedroom. Box of books was in the same spot for a long time. Finally moved it only to find a big male body part drawn on the carpet with a Sharpie. No one knows who did it. Kids around 9 and 10 blamed the infant. Those kids are in college today and still won't own up to it. Fudge thing has been haunting me for 10 years. Answer: have you seen the show American Vandal? It has relevance to your issue and would make a fun family watch to draw out the male body part drawer. Gotta apply some heat. American Vandal is a true crime spoof show, think Making a Murderer, about which teenager is drawing male body part all over the school. It sounds dumb, and I guess it is, but god darn it's funny. Story 12. My buddy's case. His place was hit with a Molotov and he passed away a few days later. The police didn't even try to solve it. Several friends who heard a gang threatening him days prior weren't even interviewed. The killer is out there free. Story 13. I don't know about haunting, but I think about it very often. What happened to Paul Giancontieri's and David Rose's bodies? They went cave diving at Devil's Hole in Nevada, and despite numerous recovery missions, they've never been found. But the recovery divers reported an extremely strong current near a crack at the bottom of the cave, and when they put the depth line down, it never reached the bottom. They think it's an underground ocean that pretty much sucks you in and drags you away to who knows where. They're pretty certain it at least connects Nevada and Mexico, since an earthquake in Mexico caused the water to slosh around at Devil's Hole. Fudge, terrifying. Story 14. The Lane Bryant takedown in Tinley Park, IL back in 2008. 5 eliminate, 1 injured. The survivor helped with a sketch, and there was audio of the killer, but the case has gone nowhere. Story 15. A woman from my hometown high school went missing after she graduated college. She had just gotten a job in Portland, and they found her car with her purse in it and everything. She just disappeared. I know this stuff happens all the time, but this was someone who I remember vividly, and even hung out with her sister a little, so it was much more close to home. Her name is Katie Eggleston, and she was from Redmond, Oregon. Story 16. Greg Weedle of the Army was found alongside of Vanessa Guillen. He was labeled a deserter, and that was it. I was in school with him from the very beginning to the end. He ended up joining the Army, and I joined the Marine Corps. I knew Greg. He was a lot of things, but he was not a deserter, and even if he was takedown. And I, for one, alongside his family, would like an explanation. Answer: alongside of. They were separate incidents and found a week or so apart in different locations. Someone called in a tip while they were looking for VGS. After many things that have happened here, they should have actually looked for him, similar to Dakota Stump, being labeled the same, then found to have been deceased after a car accident. They also should have actually investigated the many claims people made against his spouse. Story 17. I don't know the name of it, but the men who went to see a basketball game and wound up miles away on a mountain. Some were found in the woods, and others were found wrapped in blankets, completely emaciated in a cabin in the woods. Most of them starved to passing, or at least looked very, very, very thin when their bodies were found, but there was an open locker full of food in the cabin. So many more details, but makes my stomach turn to think of what did that, not who. Answer: the guy found in the cabin struggled with common sense decision-making. His family member said once when his room was on fire, he stayed in bed because he was afraid to miss work. It would be very easy for someone like that to starve to passing surrounded by food. All it would take is one of the more competent ones panicking, and they'd all probably make a series of bad decisions. Story 18. My friend's son was kidnapped by his grandparents and moved somewhere in South Asia where there's no extradition. We have no idea what they're doing to him or how they're raising him. I miss that little boy. He's only a few months older than my eldest. Story 19. Unsolved takedown of Missy Bevers. It stands out to me because the killer was filmed walking inside the church, just relaxed and waiting for her. It's been several years, though. They could have died or moved to another country by now. Story 20. Kyron Horman. His dad used to come into the grocery store I worked at back at the time. Quiet gentleman. He was never the same after Kyron disappeared. Story 21. My friend Bob's passing. They said it was self-induced. Why was he in the back seat of a burning car if he eliminated himself? Fact is, he owed a lot of bad people a lot of money and was unable to repay. There is nothing anyone can say to convince me that it wasn't a homicide. Story 22. The Sauter children disappearance. It's an American case. The Sauter family home burned down in 1945, with 5 of their 10 children still inside. No bodies or bones of the children were found, and the kids were never seen again. 23 years after the fire, the parents received an anonymous letter with a photo of one of the missing children as an adult, indicating that the children were still alive. It's still unclear what happened to the children and who sent that letter to the parents and why. Answer: I truly feel horrible for the Sauter parents. Losing so many children at once must have been devastating. There's so many weird facets to the case as well, like the fire chief burying an animal organ on the property in an attempt to trick them into closure because they believed their children weren't dead. For good reason, not a single bone was found for any of those dead children. Or the fact that someone had cut the phone lines, or that the fire department claimed the fire was started by an electrical issue, but the parents claimed the lights were still working in the house when they realized a fire had broken out, or that it took the fire department like 7 hours to arrive to the fire, which was only 2.5 miles away. Worst of all, a visiting salesman had literally told the father that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed a few months before the fire because of the father's anti-Mussolini comments. Like, that's literally insane. The whole case is wild and just really sad for the parents and the family as a whole. Story 23. Brandon Swanson, the college kid who got lost in the middle of the night between two small towns and somehow disappeared while on the phone with his dad. He was walking towards city lights of whatever town he thought he was going towards, and the last thing his dad heard was, "Oh shoot," and then nothing. They never found his body, but some landowners in the area refused to let police search their property. I think it was believed he maybe wandered on private property and someone got rid of him after he died. I hope he's found someday, but it's been 17 years this last month. Answer: I don't think police need anyone's permission to search open land, woods, fields, etc. And if they had any real evidence justifying a search of someone's backyard house, they could get a warrant. I don't see how a property owner can be the bad guy here for declining to let the police go on a fishing expedition in their home. Is it that property owners can prohibit volunteer searchers and the police lack manpower? Story 24. The case of Maura Murray. A 21-year-old college student emailed her professors about a fake family emergency, packed her car, and drove to a rural area in New Hampshire. She crashes her car on a quiet road. A witness speaks to her, calls the cops, and by the time they arrive minutes later, she's just gone. No tracks, no signs of struggle, just vanished. It's been 20 years, still no trace, still no answers, like the earth swallowed her. Story 25. A very close friend of mine met with a John one night, was later found pretty brutally violation and takedown in a park. The people close to her and I were trying really hard to get her out of intimacy work, but she just didn't want to listen. I even offered to let her live with me, and every time she had a client, as she called them, lined up, I would pay her whatever her fee was to just not go. I could afford it at the time, so I was willing to do it if it meant keeping her safe. But she said she felt like that would be taking advantage of me, and she would just swear up and down she was in no danger and we were all overreacting. She was only 17 years old when she died. I'd known her since elementary school, and we bonded because we were both badly abused physically and intimacy as children, and we found comfort in each other. I remember when we were in middle school, when either of our abusers showed signs they were going to come into our room later that night, or after one of us had already been violation that night, we would message each other on MSM, and we would both go a forest roughly halfway between both our house, and we would sleep under a tree together to keep the other company, make sure they didn't feel alone, and to keep warm. It was comforting because we never had to explain what we were feeling in those moments. We could, and sometimes did, but we knew the other inherently knew exactly what we were feeling, and so we could just sit, often cuddled up, like with my arm over her and her head on my shoulder. in silence, and it made the world feel less lonely. So, of course, with the nature of what she was to me, there wasn't anything I wouldn't have done to save her, but the hard lesson I've had to learn to accept is she ultimately didn't want saving. She was going to make her choices either way, and there was nothing more I could do about it than what I already tried. I mean, more than once I even got into fights with men who tried to hurt her, but this time I wasn't able to step in, and she was eliminated. It hurts thinking about what her last moments were like. She must have known this was it at some point, and that was how her life was going to end, exactly how she was treated her whole life. Wherever you are, Lillian, I'm sorry we couldn't protect you, and we were never able to get justice for you. I'll never forget the impact you had on my life, and my character as a human. You were the first person to believe I was capable of more than what I believed in myself, and you were the one to put me on the path to becoming the better version of myself I am today. I truly hope you found the peace you so very much deserved in life. Story 26. Brian Schaffer. There were security cameras on all entry-exit points of the bar, and not a single one shows him leaving, yet disappeared without a trace and haven't been seen or heard from in 20 years. Truly baffling case. Answer. Came here to post this very case. I graduated high school and played youth sports with Brian here and there growing up in Pickerington. Also went to OSU during the same time but never saw him. I wouldn't say we were close friends, but my groups of friends were in orbit with him. He always stuck me as a great guy and super nice, very sad about the whole thing. This is a pretty famous case here in Columbus. My wife and I talk about it all the time. Story 27. St. Louis Jane Doe. Decapitated body of a little black girl found in the basement of an abandoned building. Her head has never been found, so she's never been able to be identified. IIRC police incompetence also resulted in them losing track of where some key physical evidence was being kept, so they no longer have DNA samples to run through current databases either. I wish she had her name back, but I doubt that will happen without even a head to use for a reconstruction and no DNA samples available. My personal theory is either she was some sort of trafficking victim or her parents' guardians had some sort of involvement in her takedown, but no one can say for sure, and it bugs the hell out of me that a little kid died such a horrible passing and has never even gotten a grave with her real name on it. Story 28. It would be nice to know who eliminated my cousin. She was stabbed to passing in 1983. Her father seemed satisfied her killer was shot to passing in a shootout with police in the early 2000s, but we will probably never know. Story 29. Michaela Bali disappeared from a small town in Saskatchewan, Canada. Video evidence and eyewitness accounts leading up to her vanishing appears as though she was planning on running away with someone she was going to meet. She was never heard from again. Her actions that day were strange, and the town is a crossroads for the trucking industry. For some reason, this case just sticks with me. I pass a billboard with her picture every week, and as a father, it just tears at my heart knowing what her family must be going through. Story 30. Disappearance of Ray Griecar. Happened like a county over from where I grew up, and people talked about it for a long time, so I remember it every once in a while. The only trace they ever found of him besides his car was his laptop in one part of the Susquehanna River and its destroyed hard drive in another. Guy was district attorney for a long time and was about to retire from law at the end of the year that he vanished, so they didn't think tragic end was likely. Story 31. Morgan Nick. She went missing at a Little League baseball game, just feet away from her mother, who was in the bleachers. Answer. I watched that documentary on Hulu, and it broke my heart for her family, especially the mom who unfairly blames herself for letting her go play. I do believe that the man was prowling for a young child all day. It's so sad. Then the weather excessive rain made it impossible to search that area where they thought they might find her. I would love to see this solved one day. Story 32. Russell and Shirley Derman. Two elderly people were brutally taken down and they have no idea what happened. Answer. I live about 2 hours from there, and this one is bizarre. There was some new evidence last year that was being tested. Hopefully, something will come of it. They owned restaurant franchises before they retired. Can't remember which ones. I think someone who used to work for them, or knew they used to own the franchises, thought they had a lot of cash lying around the house and came to rob them. Just my opinion, and I could be wrong. Story 33. Maybe not unsolved, but the fact that lady and her dad from a deadly American marriage got to walk on appeal was nuts. Or Casey Anthony unreal. Story 34. Diamond and Tianda Bradley, two missing girls from Chicago, never found. 2001. I would bet $1 million their mom's boyfriend did it. Story 35. Lars Mittank, a German tourist who disappeared mysteriously in Bulgaria in 2014, and more than 10 years later, there is not a single trace of him or even a clue what might have happened. I can't imagine what his family and friends have gone through. Story 36. Alexandra Wiewczaruk went for a walk in Saskatoon, Canada one night in 1962 and never came home. Her dead body was found in a shallow grave just blocks from home 2 weeks later. Wanting it to be solved via genealogical DNA search because no one mentions her next-door neighbor was a guy named Sanford Clark, who's a rabbit hole in itself. Story 37. Guy in my town like 20 years ago was taking his kids to school and got into a road rage incident. He got out of his car and the other driver shot him dead in the street, in broad daylight with his kids in the car. Nobody knows who the shooter was. Always reminds me that idiots on the road are not worth arguing with and to keep driving. Story 38. Johnny Gosh. He was a paperboy who disappeared doing his route one morning in Des Moines, Iowa at the age of 12. I